We're recording. So for those of you who are joining us, whenever you join us through YouTube, we're going to be talking about The Great Divorce by C.S. Lewis. And we haven't started reading anything yet. Well, I haven't. I don't know about you two. But so the deal with this is it's one of my favorite books by C.S. Lewis. And to put it in a nutshell, it's an allegory about heaven and hell and humanity and how we live in this surreal reality. So I think it's a great book. And I know, Susan, you had said it's a bit much to take in when you first start reading it. So I'm hoping this group, we can work together on it.
Yeah, I'm willing to try new things. I mean, I gotta get out of my comfort zone at some point. Lord knows I'm doing that at work, so.
Yeah. And Jen, have you read this one before? I know you like C.S. Lewis.
I don't think I have. I thought that I had because I recognized the title, but I have read a lot of his other stuff like Mere Christianity, Chronicles of Narnia, Screwtape Letters, and then his space trilogy, which I can't think of what it's actually called, but that one was really good. The third book in that trilogy was weird and didn't really match the other two, but it was all, pretty great. But he is a very heady writer, and if you're not used to his cadence, it can be really like, what's this guy talking about? So yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, I don't remember. I get him and Tolkien mixed up. I want to say he was the professor of mythology, or he was the professor of the English language. But C.S. Lewis was a remarkable human being.
Yeah, he might have been mythology. Like the language part makes sense for Tolkien, considering how much language is in Lord of the Rings. Yeah. I know that he was an atheist before he met Tolkien. So we have Tolkien to thank for.
So the Chronicles of Narnia that you mentioned, is that the one they made a movie of a few years ago?
Yes. It's children's stories, and there's 7 of them, and they're all really, really good. They did a great job with the first movie. So yeah, if you've seen the movie and you like it, you'll like the book as well.
I actually did see the movie. I don't remember a lot about it, but I did see it. I'll maybe have to watch it again just to kind of try and get into the old C.S. Lewis mindset and see if that helps me to understand a little bit more about him.
But so I'll just give you guys an overview here. This book starts in, I think it's the Gray Town or something like that, and that's C.S. Lewis's. The whole book is an allegory. So it's C.S. Lewis' imagination about not necessarily about what heaven and hell are like, but how in his mind they kind of work together. And it tells a story about the main character who wants to draw closer to God. And throughout this tale, that means becoming more real, more really real. And so Greytown, it gets described at some point in the book as hell for some, and for those who choose to leave and go to heaven, it's purgatory. So it's a place that's kind of characterized by the breakdown of human relationships and the human-God relationship. And the way this story is told is God cares so much about everybody. God sends a bus to hell for anybody in hell that wants to go on the bus and go to heaven. And that's kind of what the whole story is about, is this bus takes several people from the Gray Town. And I think there's only a couple of chapters where it's just on the bus describing the different people and the conversations and their hopes and their dreams. And then the bus goes to heaven, and heaven is this place where everything is so real that those who are in the unreal place of the Gray Town just struggle to adapt to it. But that's sort of the growth of the character, is growing to adapt. An example is it hurts to walk on the grass in heaven because the grass is too real, because the people who are getting there from the bus aren't real enough yet. They're kind of like ghostly spiritual type things. And that the characters in this heavenly place are just so real that it's overwhelming in some cases. There's one part where the main character gets washed down the river because he goes to step into the river like he would on Earth, and it's hard, but the waves are solid, and they just kind of push him all the way down. And I guess I'm saying all of this sort of to give us a concept of what's being described is not real and fully real, and it's a progression from this to over here throughout the story, and you encounter different characters. The main character, who is sort of C.S. Lewis in the story, encounters one of C.S. Lewis's great mentors, George MacDonald, who greets him and at the bus stop basically in heaven, and is his sort of guide to moving further up and becoming real. I mean, that's the kind of the trajectory for the story and for where things are going. Any questions or comments or ideas?
No. Yeah.
Did you mention this in staff meeting one time?
Probably.
Like, okay. Some of that sounds familiar, so I was just wondering.
Well, and for me, this book has shaped a lot of my thinking on what it means to be a Christian, on what it means to be human. It's shaped my concept of heaven and hell and God's grace. And I wasn't always aware of how this book has shaped me, but I read it. I used to take it with me whenever I went camping or backpacking, and I would read it on those trips. And so I don't know how many times I've read this book. I just fell in love with it. So
I'm curious about something. You said in heaven, everything is so real that it hurts to walk on the grass. So on the other extreme, in hell, it doesn't hurt to walk on the grass, or I'm not sure what I'm trying to say here.
So if
go ahead.
So this is an allegory. So it's not like this is the way it is. This is C.S. Lewis's story. And the way that it's pictured is that the gray town is so fake that it's not even tangible. In fact, the bus is so small that the space that all of hell takes up, all of the gray town and all of its existence takes up, is smaller than the smallest grain of sand, because it's just so false, so unreal. And then the bus becomes big and real as it moves into the heavenly space. Not so much that the grass in the gray town hurts or anything, or doesn't hurt, as much as it's the idea that it's just not even real as the idea of realness is.
Okay.
I don't know if that helped you at all or further confused you.
It does, but it reminded me of the fact that being a nurse, allegories are not generally part of my day-to-day concept, and I'm more of I believe, don't get me wrong, and all that kind of thing, but I'm going to have to work on the allegory concept, because obviously science is more in my day-to-day existence. So, and it's been a few years since I took any kind of English literature class.
That's okay. This is why it's best in a group to talk about this sort of stuff, because we'll read stuff and we'll be like, what in the world is going on? And that's just how it goes. I mean, you could categorize this book, and some people probably do, as science fiction, simply because, one, it's fiction, and two, I don't know what else to describe it as. A fantasy, maybe. And I guess part of what I wanted to spend some time talking about, though, is what do you hope for in reading this book? What are you looking for in our time together over the 8 weeks or so that we're going to be reading this book? Because that's at least 8 hours of us talking to each other. So I hope that would be profitable for something. But what are your hopes for this time together?
curiosity about C.S. Lewis and his perspective on things. Like we said earlier, I've heard so much about him and his writings that I thought this would be a good place to start. And how he I don't know if perceives is the right word, but describes or views heaven and hell and that kind of thing. And with someone who's obviously two people who have read it and can better understand it, hopefully I'm not reading a book in Greek or something to that effect.
But hopefully we can all help you understand that and maybe understand ourselves a little bit more too as we read it.
And I should say too, that being a relatively new Christian and believer, I'm kind of curious in that aspect too. I mean, because growing up, church for me was weddings and funerals and nothing even remotely like I do now, like I attend now. So
yeah. Okay. Thank you. Jen, any hopes, thoughts?
I haven't read C.S. Lewis in a while, and so I'm kind of just looking forward to getting back into that. In college, it was kind of required reading for certain classes, and then after I graduated, there was a whole class about C.S. Lewis that, of course, came up after I graduated. But I haven't read this one yet, and so just I like his stuff, so looking forward to it.
Cool. Yeah. I think for me, one of my hopes is that this will help take not only me, but take us all a little bit deeper in an understanding of God's grace. When I come back to this book, the ultimate thing for me is that this book is rooted in God's grace. Even just the concept of God reaching down into whatever hell is in such a constant way to invite people who have chosen not to be in relationship with God to continue to be in relationship or to begin to be in relationship with God. I see as God's grace. And I think for me, what I keep wanting to see in this book every time I read it, is that I can see more people that I know and love who don't know or love God being reached out to by God's grace. And I guess that's part of my hope, is that our conversation can help us to understand God's grace in deeper and new ways, maybe. And in the case of me, I always love reading things, even if I've read them dozens of times. I love to read because my memory is such that I don't remember everything I read. And it's always exciting to say, oh, wow, I don't remember that part. That's really cool.
Plus, I think just in general, when you reread a book, you gain more understanding or a different kind of understanding of it, or maybe pick up on things you might have missed the first time around if you were trying to follow the basic concept of the book. Mm-hmm. At least I found in the past.
Yeah. So do you two have copies of the book already?
I do not, but Amazon can get it to me by Friday, so that's no big deal.
Okay.
I actually.
So say if you don't and you do subscribe to Audible has a version of it that is included with an Audible subscription. So you wouldn't have to purchase that. I don't know if it's any good because I didn't download it and start listening to it yet. But that's one of the things I want to do, is because I think it'd be interesting to hear how someone else portrays the voices rather than my own imagination. So that's how I'm going to be reading it this time through, is I'm going to be listening to it.
Okay.
I have to look into that. That might be a good thing on my way to or from work. I could listen to it, and maybe with someone else reading it, obviously they're going to place different emphasis on different things. And
that. So that's another way to get a hold of it. I know lately for me, I've found that listening to books has been really, really helpful. Like you said, Susan, for commuting, I don't have a commute, but I do get to listen to books while I read, or not while I walk, and while I run, and when I go to the grocery store, that sort of stuff. I've got headphones in, I'm not paying attention to the people around me, I'm listening to a book almost every time. So I guess one of the things I want to ask you too is, how much reading do we want to do every week? Because a lot of these chapters are short, some of them are longer than others, but we could do 2 chapters a week and be done with this in a total of 8 weeks. So that'd give us 7 weeks, because I think there's 14 chapters in the whole book. Does that sound like something that would be reasonable?
I think so.
Yeah.
Just a matter of logistics for that. And yeah, I guess I didn't have a whole lot of time because I didn't know how many people were going to be here tonight. So I don't want to spend a whole lot more time talking unless there's things you'd like to talk about for this book, or things that you're interested in that I might already know. Okay, well, we'll be short this week, which is good, I think, for all of us probably. And next week will be a full hour, because we'll be discussing and reflecting on some of these things. Because there's some cool stuff. Like one person asked, well, what about Napoleon? Is he here in the Gray Town? And they're like, oh yeah, he lives way out that way, and he's so far away from everybody because he doesn't want to deal with anybody. I mean, there's some neat stuff in there like that. And it's just like one little tiny sentence that just, oh, wow, I hadn't even thought about that. Well, what about Hitler? Oh, yeah, he's there. He lives up on the hill. No one ever talks to him. He doesn't want to talk to anybody. Anyway, so thank you both. Thanks for setting aside the time, even though we've done a short time of it. I look forward to our discussion next week, and God bless you both.
All right. God bless you, and I'll see you guys next week.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.